To bulk or not to bulk? That is the question, and to bulk is the answer. Sorry, Greg. In today's video, we're going to talk about the common sense approach to bulking, the pitfalls and main gaining, and exactly how I approach a quality off-season to gain muscle mass. Over the last few years, influencers from Jeff Nippard to Greg Doucette have turned their backs on the old school ways of bulking in favor of newfangled methods titled gaintaining, main gaining, recycling the old ideals of a lean bulk with a facelift. These methods basically entail trying to recomp, which is losing body fat and gaining muscle mass at the same time. It sounds great in theory, until you realise that doing so will put you in a non-optimal state for both losing fat and gaining muscle. Now, of course, stirring the pot is always going to be one of the main reasons behind these people going against the grain and creating their own new methodologies. Rage clicks are a thing, and the algorithm does reward them. But there is some method behind the madness. So what are the problems with the conventional route of bulking and cutting? The issue here is pretty much one that I created the channel to help solve: a lack of common sense. People bulk, they start off with the best of intentions, they won't get fat, they won't do it this time, and then they start to get disheartened by the slow rate of progress and the fact they now look softer and have less likes on Instagram. They'll quickly scran every single bit of food in sight in order to at least manage to gain some muscle mass, only to get fatter and fatter. This leads them to jump straight back into a calorie deficit in order to correct the course, removing that opportunity for their body to truly adapt and grow over a long extended bulking period. But the current proposed alternatives from Greg and Jeff, for example, leave very little margin for error. A very strict, controlled, just above maintenance calorie level is going to be almost impossible to accurately track and pretty much leaves no room for changes in your day-to-day schedule or expenditure. Take an extra few steps in the day, you're in a deficit. Beef mince, not exactly the same nutritional values as it says on the back of the pack. You're in a surplus. You got one foot in both camps, you're being promised the best of both worlds, and you're being delivered quite the opposite. On the other hand, large uncontrollable surpluses, the dirty bulks, will quickly lead you to gain surplus body fat, which will stall your rate of muscle gain. And if you truly are dirty bulking, eating pizza, cookies, muffins, you can't even necessarily guarantee that performance is going to be a benefit of this approach. So what's the answer? Well, common sense tells us tribalism bad, logic good. Both methods come with their own drawbacks, so how do we maximize the positives and minimize the negatives? Well, to do that, we're going to give ourselves some upper and lower boundaries and then give ourselves a little bit of room to maneuver. To minimize the margin of error and maximize recovery, you're going to want to have at least sort of 300 calories as a calorie surplus here. To avoid unnecessary fat gain, I'd probably try and top out at about a 500 calorie surplus. But the key thing to remember is that your calorie figure is not fixed, because as you gain weight, as your body adjusts to the new level of nutrition, of course, you're going to have higher calorie demands. So this surplus will change throughout the course of a bulk. The surplus amount won't, but your total calorie intake will. So if you're looking for a 300 to 500 calorie surplus, then why the hell am I in a 2000 calorie surplus? Well, calorie counters aren't a science. They don't take into account metabolism, stress, sleep, any of the factors which can have a major influence on the amount of calories that your body consumes. I'm an enhanced bodybuilder too. So stuff like anabolic steroids and glucose disposal agents will all play a factor in my energy expenditure. I have a fairly high stress lifestyle and job. That will play a factor. My sleep suffers because of my body weight. That will play a factor. So although a calorie calculator may tell you need 3,500 calories, this will only serve as a baseline and a starting point for you to assess what your true maintenance is. For example, mine says I need 3,500, but as soon as I go below sort of 4,500 calories on my training days, I start to see a sharp drop in body weight, which suggests that going 1,000 calories below that is utter madness. So how do you find your true maintenance? First of all, you're going to go onto one of those pesky, inaccurate online calorie calculators, and you're going to use those calories for the period of about a week. During this period of time, the initial period where you're trying to assess what your maintenance calories truly are, I'm going to want you to weigh yourself on almost a daily basis. If there's a dramatic change over the course of the first few days, then you may want to assess whether you need to make a change earlier, but otherwise I'd say make your first assessment about a week later. Did you lose a pound? Then add 100 calories. Did you gain a pound? Can you guess what I'm gonna say? Drop 100 calories. Stayed the same? Perfect. Keep it there. From that point, you're going to want to add your surplus on. So once you've found your calories, you've stuck at them for maybe a week or two to definitely demonstrate that they are maintenance, add 300 to 500 calories. Now, there will come a time where weight will stall. It probably won't be for a good few weeks, but when that time comes and you've had maybe a week of consistently the same body weight, you're going to use the mirror and performance to enhance your decision-making process. Are you visually improving still and strength going up? Well, you may want to see it out for just another week because you never know, sometimes the weight increase can stall. I've had many a time where I've gone sort of 10 to 14 days with absolutely no weight change, then suddenly I've gained 4 pounds. Can you imagine what would have happened if I'd have stuffed pizza down my gob in the meantime? If you're stalling on most of those fronts, then maybe you can go ahead and add between 100 and 200 calories. Now, I mentioned the mirror, and this is going to be a controversial one for all you dirty bulkers out there. I know how much you're scared of looking at that image in the mirror and your sloppy silhouette. But the truth is, we obsess over the scale far too often. It doesn't go up, we're definitely not gaining muscle mass, and if it doesn't go down, we're definitely not losing body fat. And this is exactly why you should be utilizing a mirror in both your preps and your cuts and your bulks. We have a habit when we're bulking of throwing on a hoodie and casting aside all external judgment. I get it, Instagram rewards the shreds, and you've still got 78 photos from when you were lean left to repost throughout the year. But doing this removes your accountability to yourself. You can't correct mistakes that you aren't aware exist. Just ignoring the issue isn't going to make it go away. No one tell the hell for every size movement. Every single person goes through the same process online. Just because they're not all as quick to like it doesn't mean that they can't all relate. Pose as often as possible and just make sure that you still look relatively like a bodybuilder. Is that subjective? Sure. But everyone has a different acceptable level of body fat and composition. And this will change throughout your journey. When I first started out, it was almost impossible to get shredded. I didn't have enough muscle mass, quite simply. It wouldn't have been healthy for me to have pushed that far. And in my off-season, there wasn't enough muscle mass equally to make it appear as if I was muscular. 10 pounds of fat being added to a 160-pound physique is drastically different than 10 pounds of fat being added to a 220-pound physique. There's a reason why Eddie Hall almost had abs at 400 pounds. The sheer size of the muscle bellies can make it look like you're much leaner than you are at a fairly similar body composition to somebody who's a lot smaller. That and all the drugs. Moving on, let's talk about the foods that you're going to be eating. And I'm going to keep this fairly simple. I pretty much live by the 80-20 rule. And what the 80-20 rule means, if you're not familiar with Fuad Abiyad's content, which you should be, is that 80% of my food are from sort of optimal bodybuilding foods. That's rice, potatoes, chicken, beef, salmon, pasta, I guess. And then 20% can be from sort of my choice of foods. I'm not talking having cookies and muffins all the time, but if I want to on occasion, that's fine. Or if I want to swap out one of my meals for a sandwich because I'm on the go and I have to, then that's fine also. Cereal, protein bars, malt loaf, a bulker's best friend. These are the kind of foods that I would define into that 20% of suboptimal. But Sam, aren't you just talking about cheat meals? No, but we're about to. Do you need cheat meals when you're bulking? No. Should you have them anyway? No. Will you? Fuck yes. Cheat meals, scientifically, aren't much of a benefit when you're bulking, but that doesn't mean they don't have a purpose at all. In the first couple of weeks of adjusting to new calories, say you've just jumped from 4,000 to 4,500, it can be pretty damn difficult. Starting off, when I first hit 5,000 calories, there were days upon end where I would just be spending an hour trying to get a meal down the hatch. I'd be having my final meal at 10 o'clock and going to bed at 10:15. For those people dieting down right now, I'm sure you're romanticizing the idea of a bulk, but we all know that once you actually get stuck in and you're really trying to push the boundaries, this shit ain't easy. This is where cheat meals can prove useful. If you're getting close to your calorie amounts, but you're finding it hard to get motivated to eat your final meal, or you try and eat your final meal and it's just not going down the hatch, well, I bet you there's something you can think of that you could get down. On these occasions, I like to sometimes order myself a pizza, get a McDonald's, whatever it might be, to achieve or slightly supersede my calorie goals for the day. I'm not talking having pizza every single day, but strategically used, they can be useful. What will then happen is that the next day, your metabolism, your appetite will definitely see a rise. Trust me, I'll wake up ravenous, I'll be able to get meal 1, 2, 3 down the hatch like it's nothing, and the further 3 meals, all from rice and beef, are a breeze. Cheat meals can also be used in order to simply switch off. Look, I know that the more that you commit to this game and the more regimented you are, it is true, the faster your results will come, but we are all human and we do have to factor in life happening, or else we don't factor it in, it happens anyway, and we're left up shit's creek without a paddle.
Oh no, I just finally cried myself to sleep.
We're not always able to be optimal. Sometimes you're going to want to go for dinner with your girlfriend, you're going to want to go out for a drink with your mates, or you're going to have to travel and meal prep simply isn't possible. It's absolutely fine to go off plan on these occasions, but just try and get as close to good as possible. That's all I'll say. Sometimes you're going to be eating out twice a day when you're traveling. The important thing is the decisions you make within that. Mental resets are just as important as physical resets. Sometimes you've got to remember there's more to life than bodybuilding, painful as that is to hear. Finally, let's talk about the dreaded topic of activity. Yes, that's right. I'm going to be asking you to get your ass up off the sofa. Simply put, you should still be hitting a minimum step count per day of around 8 to 10,000. This is just for your health, for your well-being, and to make sure that you actually have some form of energy expenditure. Then on top of that, you can add low-impact steady-state cardio at your discretion. Incline treadmill, Stairmaster, recumbent bike, just going for a brisk walk or a hike, whatever it might be, get yourself moving a couple of times a week in order to help with blood pressure, cardiovascular health, all of those good things. If you put all these elements together, you're going to end up with a bulk which is pretty much foolproof. If you're not a dick with cheat meals, you shouldn't gain too much surplus fats at around a 400 or 500 calorie surplus. And 300 calories will leave you more than enough room to maneuver in case expenditure spikes. A surplus of 300 to 500 calories. Using online calorie calculators as a guide and not gospel to find your true maintenance, and then adding your surplus from there, making sure that at least 80% of your foods are from optimal bodybuilding sources, keeping cheat meals in check and using them strategically only where absolutely necessary, and getting your ass off the sofa a couple of times a week. That's the common sense approach to bulking. Fuck main gaining. I'll see you in the next one.